Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. A quick story for you, listener, about meeting my guest today for the first time. Andrew and I were introduced by a mutual friend as two passionate humans creating 4 small businesses she knew would get along. And she also thought he'd be a fantastic guest for the show, which she absolutely wasn't wrong, as you will hear. But back to that first meeting. See, we connected for a chat about this pod, but also about the work I do with brand-led original podcasts and all of Andrew's incredible work, as it felt like there might be some cool collab opportunities at some stage. And well, that was definitely part of our chat. For the most part, we just waxed lyrical about the joy of doggos, the uniqueness of Tasmania, the incredibleness of working from home and remotely and being able to connect with people globally, our thoughts, feelings and ideas for well over the allotted time we had scheduled together, and I loved every minute of it. Andrew Griffiths, best-selling author, small business speaker, educator, and so much more, is simply an excellent human. A very genuine, excellent human. And I loved this conversation with him just as much as I've loved reading his latest book. Just listen to this list of topics you're about to hear, which isn't even the half of it. We get into learning to love the uncertainty of entrepreneurship, letting the strategy reveal itself as you go, the naysayers in your life that you just have to ignore, the underestimation of the simple things, teaching from experience over expertise, taking your personal brand seriously, maintaining relevance in an evolving small business landscape, and a lesson in writing, speaking, and publishing books. I just know you're going to love this chat, listener, and I also know it will remind you of how incredible you are to be building your business, no matter how it looks or at what stage it's at right now, and you're going to feel so motivated and excited to keep going after you've heard it. And make sure to stick around all the way to the end, as every minute is insightful. But Andrew left me thinking about a really important phase of business that doesn't often get talked about, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Let's get into it. I'm here with Andrew Griffiths, author, speaker, business advisor, and all-round self-employment guru. When he gets asked what he does, the simple answer is that he works with people of substance to help them build businesses of substance. But more formally, he's an entrepreneurial futurist, all about helping business owners, entrepreneurs, and corporations future-proof themselves. He has been writing books for 20 years, publishing 14 best-selling business and personal development books sold in over 65 countries, including my current favourite, Someone Has to Be the Most Expensive, It Might As Well Be You. Amen to that. I tell myself that every day. Andrew has delivered over 750 presentations in 25 countries as a speaker and advisor, with clients including CBS, Hewlett-Packard, European Union, and more. His advice is a combination of street-smart wisdom, practical concepts, and productive triggers derived from the hard-earned lessons with his own trial and error, as well as years of close observation and identification of the characteristics shared by both the really successful and the really unsuccessful. As Australia's official #1 small business author, founder of the ultimate portfolio business, dedicated to growing more small businesses by sharing the entrepreneurial rites of passage with others, something you'll understand I'm very much all about. And I'm very excited to hear his story, Andrew. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thank you, Kim. Always hard to live up to those openings, isn't it? You know, it's like now I feel the pressure to be something extraordinary. I'll do my utmost.
I think it comes quite naturally to you, so I'm not concerned about this whatsoever. But before we deep dive into some of your incredible business learnings, I want to talk about your wife, who is just as equally as amazing as you are, just conducting a TEDx talk in Hobart. I'd like to know how she would describe you.
Well, I think that probably she's my #1 fan in reality too. Lolita is her name. And she is always the one who tends to, acknowledge stuff that I've done that I breeze over or brush over, or, those days that you don't feel like you're as successful or you feel more challenged or whatever. She's always that one who's there to remind me of those things that make me feel better. It's good to have that person in your camp, isn't it? That your #1 fan, is close by, I think is always a good thing.
I couldn't agree more. The partners are the unsung heroes of the businesses we build. They see the ugliness,
Oh,
the
wow. Mm.
chaos, the joy. They see everything and are always there. So they are a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hard job being a partner of an entrepreneur. And ideally, generally entrepreneurs attract entrepreneurs, I think, but it's a different world, isn't it? The way that we would think as business owners, I've done it for so long now, I don't know any other way to think. But if you had to get dropped into running a business after maybe never running one all your life and then diving into all the things you got to do, I don't know. I think it'd be like being a couch potato for 40 years and then deciding to run an ultra marathon on the Tuesday. It would be, it's a heavy duty path to follow.
Oh, it absolutely is. Sometimes I say things to my partner that I'm like kind of comfortable with, like, oh, look, cash flow is not great at the moment. It's probably got about 3 or 4 weeks in it. And he's like, what? Like, oh, no,
Yeah,
no, that's
yeah, yeah.
fine. Like, that's totally fine because that'll, change with this. He's like, okay, cool. I'm just going to go for a run. I'm just going to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
out of the
yeah.
house. Yeah.
That's all right. The greatest thing I always say, if you're going to be in business, you have to get comfortable with uncertainty because that's what is normal in business, isn't it?
Mhm.
This uncertainty, you just don't know, and I like that. I like that because that works both ways. The uncertainty is not a bad thing. It just means that you never quite know what your next email is. You never quite know what tomorrow will bring. You never quite know what else is going to happen, and I've certainly had those emails that have come through that have changed my life, good and bad, as an entrepreneur. And you look at it and go, wow, that's one of those things. But if that uncertainty is too stressful for you, then it's not the life. Really, it's not. It's just, pick with something which is going to be more certain. And I think it's a safer bet.
Oh, you couldn't be more right. There is nothing more certain than the uncertainty we will experience in this gig. So,
Yeah, exactly.
what brought you to starting it then? What brought you into your first foray with self employment? How did it start?
Well, it was for me. I'd never really grown up as that entrepreneurial person. Like I really fell into it. So there were no role models. There were no. I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. I didn't really have any of that kind of background. But it just I had a fairly tumultuous upbringing, and then just circumstances all landed that. At the age of 17, I was working part time in a dive shop in Sydney, and I ended up buying it. And it was kind of funny. I mean, the guy that ran it was a crazy Canadian guy, and Mac was his name, and he ran it terribly. But I was there, and it was a really great kind of scene. It was really eclectic mix. Diving really united people. So you'd have a neurosurgeon and a bricklayer would be besties. That unified theme, and I really enjoyed being a part of that. And so I was just really kind of filling tanks and washing dive gear and doing that kind of stuff. And he wanted to go back to Canada, and so he said, "Do you want to buy the business?" And I knew nothing about buying businesses, but I went into the bank and I borrowed, I think it was like 25 grand or something at the time. Back in the 80s, when you walked into a bank and they gave, a 17-year-old kid $25,000 in a check, and I think my interest rate then was like 21% or something. So, everyone's complaining about interest rates these days. I go, if it's under 20%, I'm happy. And then I kind of, he gave me the keys, I gave him the check, and all of a sudden now I owned a business. And I felt so fabulous. And up until then, I really was not on a good path. Broken home. I was an orphan when I grew up. I was in and out of state care. I was going down the path of drugs and alcohol and, the predictable, broken childhood kind of path. And it was really fortuitous because I landed in this business, and all of a sudden, I think I developed self-respect. I think I realized that people looked at me differently as the business owner. I think that I all of a sudden played a role in people's lives, and they were grateful, and I made decisions. I had no freaking idea what I was doing. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I walked in and my Richard Branson turned on. It was a disaster in every stretch of the imagination in terms of profitability, bookkeeping. My bank manager used to pop by every day and give me the checks that I bounced the day before. I didn't understand profit margin. I didn't know sales. I did what he did. And he ran an unsuccessful business. So I just kept running an unsuccessful business until I realized that probably wasn't going to be a strategy that was going to work long term. the old things, those early experiences are often the ones that are so transformational. And it really was for me. I often think back about my early days and what I learned and how, it really defined me, really, really defined me as a person. Even, you mentioned my latest book, Someone's Got to Be the Most Expensive. I look at that came out of that dive shop all those years ago because I didn't know how to charge. I didn't value myself. I sold cheap gear because I thought that's what everyone wanted, and so that's 40 years ago now. Then that lesson has lingered with me. There was so much that happened. So yeah, it was an extraordinary time.
I can imagine and smile deeply to myself as somebody who bought a beauty salon at the ripe old age of 18 and went through quite a terrible period of failure post that and did everything wrong possible. I love that a lot because I feel like I am absolutely connected with an entrepreneurial spirit here where you just can't break it. You go and do other things and but you always have to have that something that you're building. And yeah, I
Mm,
really love that. There's, I guess, a bit of a tone to, I've had the pleasure of talking to you before, of course. I had the pleasure of reading your book
mm.
as well and consuming more of your content. You have a tone to what you talk about in entrepreneurialism that I have a suspicion has played a big part in your own journey through it. That kind of sense of you can't plan your way into learning how to grow and run and be successful within any kind of business environment, no matter what that actual business looks like. That's definitely the vibe that I get. And it's something that I resonate with because Lord knows, as hard as I try to plan something, it's completely different when I get into it. And I just have to throw
Mm.
everything out of the window. So I want to see a little bit of how that has played out for you when it comes to shifting your business into the entrepreneurial consultancy and writing space. How much of that were you able to plan and how much of that was chuck yourself in and see how it goes?
I think you probably already know the answer to that, right? In the earlier stages for me, there was no strategy. There was really stuff you did. Like even if I just go back to the dive shop there for a second, I learned a valuable lesson there. I ran the dive shop how everyone else ran a dive shop. I ran it how I think it should be run. I did all those things, and it just didn't work. And I had to. I realized when I got desperate enough to change, and I changed everything, and that's when it started to work. When I tripled my prices, when I turned it into a boutique, when I, got my dive instructors to wear suits, I had to change everything. And that was so profound for me that I think the thing that I learned the most then was the importance of zigging when everyone else is zagging and living and doing business to the beat of your own drum. And that then kind of played through the rest of my entrepreneurial world in so many different ways. So, move forward many, many years and I'm, running a marketing company in Cairns. And that came off the back of me working for a Japanese shipping company for a few years. And that was the only time I ever really had a real job was when I was doing marketing for them. And even that wasn't a real job. I traveled around the world and encouraged people to visit the Great Barrier Reef. So, I was on the road 9 months of the year in beautiful hotels and first class flights saying, come to the Great Barrier Reef, which is like saying, get out of bed in the morning or eat food. Everyone wanted to come to the Great Barrier Reef. But I finished that job after 5 years and I was running a marketing company and fairly the standard kind of my clients were small business clients. And I really noticed again how often I was having the same conversation, Kim. I was seeing the same kind of businesses having the same problems, and I just really started to notice this repetitiveness. I need more customers. Cash flow is terrible. I don't know how to do a sales call or have a sales conversation, etc. Same, 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 same. In a one-to-one scenario. And of course, at the end of these conversations, people are generally saying to me too, "Oh, by the way, I haven't got any money to pay a consultant." And so I was kind of running a not-for-profit marketing company. And then I said, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I quite literally just started to do fact sheets for all of the topics that I was talking about over and over again. For me, this was a productivity tool because I didn't want to keep having these conversations. And it just was not, it wasn't viable more than anything else. And then and so people could ring or people could come by and we have all these fact sheets up on the wall back in the days when you do that stuff. And or we could fax it to them. And anyway, one day, I guess around 1998 or something like that, I kind of looked at the wall and thought, well, I've got 50 of these fact sheets. Maybe if I write another 50, I could put them together, put it into a book and maybe call it 101 Ways to Market Your Business. And that's what I did. And then I thought, oh, okay, that's a book. And then I started pitching it to publishers. And I think if I thought about it too much, I would never have done it. So what started as a productivity tool then became a nice idea that could possibly go somewhere. And it was really interesting because even when I did that, I had quite a few friends that were in the marketing world. And I remember them saying to me, Andrew, look, you're a nice bloke and all, but, kind of who are you to write a book on marketing? You don't have any qualifications. You don't, rah, rah. Yeah, you've got experience, but how are you going to write a book about marketing? And it was so interesting because that made me just ignore them and do it even more. And, and of course, and then when the book came out and it was very, very successful, I made sure I sent all of them a copy of it. And most of them came back to me and said something like, wow, it's so simple. I could have written that. And I went, yeah, but the thing is you didn't, and so many of my lessons and learnings in business have been, you got to do what others are probably not prepared to do, or others don't do. And that's that, swim against the tide a little bit, Kim, zig when everyone's zagging, to use it at that kind of term. And that's served me really well over the years. Like even remote living, I've been doing remote stuff for 25 years. This is not new, the laptop lifestyle. It's like all I've ever needed is an internet connection and and a laptop, and having that mentality about it has been a part of it. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question then, but it was a really nice rave about how the book came into life.
It was an excellent rave, and very on brand given using the term rave, given we did talk about dark mofo and night mass right before
Dark mofo rave.
right before we hit record on here. But what I found that really jumped out to me with what you were just talking about is sometimes we hold ourselves back because we think the knowledge that we have to share is too simple to be engaging or too simple to be the thing that's going to launch us off into something else. I think as a strategist, I get myself caught in complexity quite often, that, thinking that it has to be something completely new or a completely innovative way of looking at something, or, be able to stand out and be successful. But so often it is those foundational basics is the wrong word. It's like foundational knowledge pillars or bricks, things in which to build on that can absolutely leverage you into the next phase and then the next phase and the next phase. But so many of us skip over that for some reason, like it's not enough.
Well, and it's a really interesting kind of point because, I coach people to write books now and speak and do all that stuff. And one of the biggest hurdles that I have, it's really top of mind for me. I just did a 4-day speaker retreat and I had a couple of people in there just going, oh, this stuff is too simple. It's too basic. And I'm going, yeah, because you've been doing it for 30 years, of course it is. But something I think that I have learned, there's a few little elements in there. Number one, the reason that my book was so successful, and my publishers told me that, which I didn't really understand. I just kind of wrote stuff, was they said, and why we want to publish it. And they said to me, look, your writing is horrendous, but your advice and your stories and your language is fabulous. You're coaching these small business owners to do stuff. And you never say you've got all the answers. You always say, we did this and it worked. This is how it worked. And I've learned that is such a valuable thing. I never, ever get up and say I've got all the answers. I don't get up and say I'm a marketing guru. I don't get up and say any of that kind of stuff. Other people say that about me. And it's like, no, what I'm really good at is figuring out what's worked for me. I can figure out what's worked for me in business with my clients and what's worked for me. And then I'm able to share that with others. And, to write a book, I figured out how to write a book, right or wrong, and I got better and better. Then I was able to teach others with my model and process, and same with speaking and all the rest of it. And I do come up against this a great deal. People go, oh, look, everyone knows this stuff. It's so basic. And I use a line that I just feel rings so true is we need to serve our audience, not our ego. And the greatest speakers and the greatest writers and the greatest business entrepreneurs understand where their audience is at and they deliver at that level. For me, and again, as another example of that, when I started speaking, I kind of felt like, oh, I've got to be this. I felt the enormity. Like my first big speaking job was Telstra, and they said, oh, we want you to talk in 38 cities around Australia about marketing. And I went, oh my God, like I'm, you're the marketing guru, you're this, and I'm going, how do I live up to that? How do I kind of do that? This enormous pressure to have all of the answers. And in the back of my head is, I haven't got any marketing qualifications. Do I have to talk about the 4 Ps of marketing? What are they? It's like, and so I would try really hard to try and sound cleverer, more clever. I would try really hard to bombard with information and data and try and show that I had great knowledge. It never felt authentic. It never felt integral to who I am. And it just became exhausting. And then one day I had that aha moment when someone actually said to me, Andrew, you know what you're really good at is teaching people to do what you've done. You don't try and take over and say, you're the expert at this. And I kind of looked at them and went, yeah, to be honest, I'm a frustrated teacher, whether it was teaching diving, teaching people about coming to Queensland, teaching people to write a book, teaching people to grow their business. I am. I'm a teacher, but I'm a teacher of what I've worked out. And so I learnt a very long time ago now, I guess, is that great communicators and great teachers really address it at the level of the person. And that then kind of means that, the information that you have, and again, line that I love to use is that no one on the planet has the same aha moments, bazinga moments, trials, tribulations, realizations, mistakes, etc. as you. And there's great value in you sharing that stuff with others, because I guarantee everyone listening to this has got their own unique knowledge stuff that they've figured out that is of value to others. We just do this throwaway line. Everyone knows this stuff. Everyone knows how to do that, and they just don't. I made a living out of this. My whole life is built around this stuff. So it's a really good lesson for people to learn, because it breaks my heart a bit that when I see people who think that the information that they have is of no value. It's like when someone says, "Oh, my story is boring." I've never met anyone with a boring story ever. Just some people are better at sharing theirs than others. That's what it is most of the time.
There are two truths about us business owners that both me and our incredible show partner Card Dog Gift know to be true. The first one is that we are some of the most generous humans on the planet. Maybe that's because we regularly have to push ourselves into uncomfortable spaces, learn to problem solve like crazy, and through all of that we realise how impactful the generosity of others is. Whether that's people who've supported us directly through free advice and guidance, or indirectly by sharing their story and learnings on this pod. The second thing I know is we're also often stretched on time and headspace. So whether you struggle to find the perfect gift for your friends and family, have a last-minute special occasion that you're not feeling ready for, or want to say thank you to your clients, team members or support team and still make it personal, Card.Gift have got you, and here is how. You can get physical or digital gift cards for retailers like Adore Beauty, Apple, Netflix, Uber and more, like 150 plus more. They have beautiful designs on the cards and support local artists by featuring their designs. Love that. You can get a Visa, MasterCard or EFTPOS gift card, which honestly just provides endless good feels for those you give it to. I personally love being able to get exactly what I want, or just get myself some silly little treats like an overpriced smoothie and say a silent thank you to the human who gifted it to me. And you can even get hyper personal with them with a custom photo, a heartfelt message, or even a video message. And lastly, Card.Gift are the loveliest of teams. From their co-founder Nick to their marketing team of Lexi and Tash down in Melbourne, they're hardworking and care about what they do, and I value their support of this show so much as it helps me to keep supporting you to thrive. So next time you're being generous, type Card.Gift into Google and thank me later. Oh, I couldn't agree more with that, and particularly see that firsthand, having the privilege of talking to so many business owners at so many different levels of scale or industries or years of experience, just how common that is, particularly as I love to talk to people who perhaps haven't had the opportunity to share their story quite so widely, and how often they say to me, oh, I don't know if I have any good learnings to share with other people, with other business owners. I'm like, are you kidding? Like the stuff we actually learn in this, like this is, if I had known what I have been able to learn by osmosis through interviewing business owners over the last, 2.5 odd years, if I had known that a couple of years ago, my God, my growth expedition, like it would have been just, I would have saved so much heartache. And, people just don't understand how something as simple as I was facing, to use the cash flow example again, I was facing a cash flow issue. So what I actually did was looked at my immediate network and asked them, who can you introduce me to for this exact thing that could have built to revenue or something? That's such a powerful lesson. So basic, but so powerful just to like put it in someone's mind to go, yeah, but it's that, but it's that, but it's that. I don't know if it's because we live now, in this marketing space, which constitutes so much digital noise, and randomness and newness is so highly celebrated. What's trending is so highly celebrated that I know
Mm.
personally I get in my own head around, even what to share and content formats that, it's about standing out and doing something new and something different, that we shy away from this. It sounds a little bit like that based on what you're sharing. That's probably why. But I'm sort of interested in your experience in marketing yourself in that, and how marketing yourself might have changed over the course of your career to date. What's been changing for you, how you present yourself, how you tap into new spaces but stay true to that foundational self.
It's another great question, isn't it? Like building that personal brand of marketing yourself. And I think that there's a few layers to it as well. I think it's changed a lot in Australia too over the years. So for me, I think I realized probably when I started writing books, so that's about 25 years ago when my first book came out, that then it really wasn't about building your personal brand as much. Like you had an organization that you built, and you were generally, as a business owner, you were, XYZ, waffles, and you might have been the owner, but it was all about the business. It was all about the business brand, and you were there in the background. And I guess the biggest shift that we've all seen over the last 25 years has been that we want to know who we're doing business with. We want to know who's behind it. We might see that you got Janine Ellis, kind of thing from Boost, her marketing and brand building, or Richard Branson's probably an even better example. He's probably more recognizable than the Virgin brand, strangely enough. It's like you go, wow. And we've realized the importance of building your own brand is now so critical for that factor that we still want to know who the human is behind what it is that we're doing, or who we're buying from, or any of those things. And so, with writing and speaking and building a personal brand at the beginning, I got to say, I really did feel very uncomfortable with it as well, because in Australia, we're taught not to really stand out, not to speak up, not to talk yourself up. And, we've all heard of the tall poppy syndrome, and we understand that, which is very difficult to explain that as a concept when you're in America. And I was going to America all the time at that stage, and seeing Americans standing on a stage so strong and confident in sharing their story and who they are, and the audience being so wonderfully reactive. And I'd speak over there, and I'd get a standing ovation just for turning up. And I kind of go, wow. And people hang on every word. And I saw that it was very different here in Australia. But I realized early on that I had to build a really strong personal brand, because no matter what I was doing in business, that was going to be the thing that was like my insurance policy, my credibility piece. It was everything. And I say now, my personal brand is my number one asset. And I have worked extraordinarily hard. I know my values. I know what I'll do. I know what I won't do. My integrity is so critical. How I act in public, how I act, not in public. Over the years, I've also seen people that are great on a stage. They get off the stage, and to be honest, they're a bit of a dick, and you look at it and go, really? Like, I've seen these love and happiness speakers get off the stage and go and start punching the AV guy because they weren't happy with, and I go, wow, really? Like, so for me, building my brand, my personal brand, the Andrew Griffiths brand, to talk about myself in the third person, it's something I do every day. It is critical. I'm acutely aware of what I say. I'm considered in everything that I do, who I partner with, what podcast shows I would go on, what media I would do or not do, who I would speak to, who I would publish with, or, for me, every single thing is a part of that personal brand. And on top of that, though, it's got to be constantly adapting and evolving, because, no good for me to build my 1999 brand and now it's 2024 and the world's moved on, and I'm still, talking about when I was a boy and these are the old values and, all of those kind of things. So it's a huge part of who I am. And I tell you, my brand is what's built my community. It has got me through so many challenging times. And so it's so critical. And I think that often people in business, people generally don't realize they've got a personal brand whether they want one or not. You've got to choose if you're going to actually build it and be proactive with it. And if you build a really great personal brand, strong, aligned, great values, all those kind of things, it will look after you in so many ways, but it won't just happen by itself. It is a day-to-day, kind of conscious, strategic, planned, and you got to do the work. So yeah, it's a really interesting topic for me. I should write a book about it.
You probably should write a book about it, actually. It's a good idea. Add that to the list of things to do. I want to, I guess, sort of pick up on that and play it out a little bit more, but also switch gears slightly in it
Sure.
and talk about how the landscape of speaking and the landscape of publishing books and making sure that you're putting your work out there and having as many opportunities to put your work out there from off the back of your personal brand building. I want to explore how you've seen that change lately with the proliferation of so many more people going into the arena of doing so, of putting them out
Mm.
on themselves out to stages, of a lot of self-publishing that's happening now with the changes that have happened over the years with the publishing industry. And what has that been like for you navigating this new landscape and keeping yourself active in this space and keeping your business
Mm.
thriving?
Yeah, again, like every industry, I guess, there's so many changes. I think if you look at the publishing side of things, I was traditionally published for my first 10 or 11 books. And, when you traditionally publish, you look down the nose of self-publishing and you be very sanctimonious and superior on that. But back then too, self-publishing, most self-published books, it used to be called vanity publishing. And that was a very appropriate title, right? Because it was like the books were crap, that there was no real process to determine. A lot of time people didn't edit them, didn't get a professional edit. They looked terrible. The fonts were too big or too small or whatever it was. So the quality of the books kind of reflected the content of the books. And so those of us who were traditional publishers would be all superior about our books because they look great. We had the editorial, blah, blah, blah. And you'd look down the nose then at anything self-published. But move forward now, the self-publishing world is so different that even though you can still self-publish a terrible book if you really want to, those of us who perhaps understand the importance of writing a credible book and publishing it well, now you do exactly the same stuff as you do in a traditional publishing house. Like, my book here, this is self-published, all right? But you would never know, the hardcover version, it's professionally edited, laid out, it's all the rest of it. It's just that for me, there was no need for me to use a publisher for that because I've got my own network, so I can do a better job of distributing it and selling it than my publisher can. And so that's probably the main shift. And I move in and out. Like I'm talking to publishers at the moment for my new books, but I might self-publish if it's more aligned with my business purposes. So we've got that ability to be able to kind of go in and out. And self-publishing now is being held to a much higher standard. And realistically, the view is you should be able to look at a self-published book or a traditionally published book, and they're both the same quality, and they would both stand up to the same rigor. The difference is with self-published, a lot of that is really up to the author to make sure that happens. So you can, if you want to publish a crap book, you can. And now we're having a lot of books coming out, AI pumped out in a weekend, and we've got this whole other world of AI where people are creating books that are really beyond their pay grade in many respects or beyond their expertise, etc. And you go, well, did you really write that or did AI write that? So there's all other elements there. But for me, the bottom line of that one is to be constantly adapting and evolving as an author, making sure you're staying relevant. Like the rise of audiobooks, Kim. Now the biggest question every author gets asked now is your book available on Audible? I get asked that all the time. And that's become such a mighty tool. There was no such thing as audiobooks. There's no such thing as Kindle books. There was no such thing as any of that stuff initially. So a lot of change and adaptation. Bottom line is, unless you've got something worth saying, your book probably won't, if you don't have something worth saying of meaning and significance, your book probably isn't going to work no matter what. So that's that. Speaking is kind of the same. I think there's a lot more speakers now, but I think that it comes back to that point of making sure that you've got something of substance to say. Like at the moment, everyone's an AI speaker. So, most AI speakers will work for food. Will speak for food is a sign that they have hanging up on the side of the road because there's this plethora of people that want to become speakers because probably a bit of a fantasy idea. I'll travel around the world and get paid all this money and I just kind of talk on a stage for an hour. Whereas in reality, professional speakers know that it's a much harder gig. It's a tougher game. It's highly competitive. I'm a bit luckier. I'm at the other end of that, having been doing it for a while. I'm what's considered like a safe bet for speaking bureaus or speaking clients because they don't have to take a risk with me, experience, on stage. They know I won't let them down. But new speakers coming through are now in a very competitive space. There's a lot of people talking about the same thing. It's a risk for that, but we got to make room for them, because they have, it's the next lot of speakers coming through. Out of them all, there's plenty of people with a lot of great stuff to say. Same in the author space. There's some amazing new authors coming through, but the world that's a little bit different now is everyone wants to become a professional speaker, make $1 million a year in 3 weeks, or become a New York Times bestseller in 1 week. And you just kind of go, there's a lot of false expectation around about that. And still, like everything, you got to do the work. You got to be prepared. Unless you climb Mount Everest with one arm and then you can speak and write books until the cockies come home, or you're an Olympian, or you kick the winning goal in some footy match or something or other, a John Eales of the world or something like that. You've got to kind of do the grunt work around. But it's definitely changing, and we are constantly trying to come to terms with what does that mean. And AI is the next tool that is going to be the challenge to navigate, and the opportunity, as well.
Absolutely. And I have to laugh because, as much as I am committed to my craft and all of the things that I want to work on, I really feel that sometimes too. Even I have the knowledge that things take time, but I'm still like looking at my, little Post-its here stuck up on the wall, all of the goals I have to hit, the stages I want to talk on, the levels I want to hit with my brand and with my podcast, the books I want to write. And I just think, why isn't that done yesterday? Like, why?
Yeah, I know.
Why not?
I know.
It's just so hard to fight that dream that you have for yourself as an entrepreneur and not, self-actualizing quickly enough. It's such a challenge and endless battle. So yeah, I have to laugh. I laughed at myself then when you said that's definitely me.
I know. And I also, Kim, I don't really want to be and sound like that. When I was a boy, we would, walk 150 miles in a snowstorm to get a speaking job and, to do that stuff. But I feel very firmly that I've got a foot in that, doing that stuff, like over, spending a few decades learning to be a speaker and build a speaking business, learning to be an author, and that running businesses. Look, I get up most mornings and I tell you, I know less about writing today than I did back then. I know less about speaking than I did. I know less about doing business today than I did back then. It feels like that is it. But I think that one of the most important elements that has worked in my favor is the fact that I am constantly aware of adapting and evolving. And I know, like even now I'm preparing a keynote to deliver in Sydney over the weekend. And it's like, what's happened in the last few months, even in the terms of the cost of living crisis or AI. I need to address that in this keynote, not just deliver the keynote that I've done 20 times in the last, or delivered it for the last 5 years, that you're only as good as your last booking, you're only as good as your last keynote. And I think that that's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the years and all the change now is we've got to adapt and evolve quicker and more. And I think that'll just kind of keep speeding up, but that's what has worked really well for me is just staying there. Because I know that sometimes when you wait too long to adapt and evolve, the gap gets too long and you do get left behind. And it's very easy. I see that with authors. I see that with speakers now. And I even see that in businesses that have really just, we all laugh about the blockbusters of the world and that, that failed to adapt and evolve. But it happens so much to small businesses. But they're too busy doing what they do. By the time they realize that they've lost relevance with their clients or their readers or their speakers, it's too hard to get the relevance back. And that's a battle that we're all in. We don't often realize or know that we're in that battle. And that's what I try and really shine the light on. It's not the cost of living crisis that's the issue. It's not the AI, how that might do you out of jobs. Well, kind of is that, I guess. It's the relevance factor. Once you lose relevance, it is almost impossible to get it back. And that's the battle that we need to be focusing on. And often I think I see people we're over here when the real battle's over here,
Oh, It's so very true. There is always something else to learn, something else to do. I think, more broadly as business owners, like we seem to think that if I can just make it to 3 years, past that ugly period
Yeah,
of, potential profitability, I'll be okay. If I get through the 7 year itch, I'll be okay. If I can make it to a decade, wow, I will be okay. And
exactly.
what I've learned from my guests and from you and from just even my own experience is like you can't crawl to the next milestone. You have to try to appreciate holding the challenge and the growth and the excitement all at the same time, all through the entire period. But that doesn't take away that there's always something that's eating at us, always something we're nervous about. What is keeping you up at night right now with your business?
For me, I think when you've been doing it for a long time as well, I think you lose less sleep because you take a bit more of a longer approach. You play a longer game. You're also more able to go, you call this a crisis. That kind of element. For me, I think I feel like now that I'm kind of getting ready for the next stage of my business life and my writing world, my speaking world, and what does that really look like for me? My end game, when I kind of go, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, is buy a big block of land and farm wombats somewhere on the east coast of Tasmania. That's the end. When that is, I'm not quite sure. But I'm spending time now really thinking about the next 10 years. And that's, like what do I want? What do I want that to look like? What do I want to write about? What influence do I want to have? And I'm definitely naturally moving into much more of a training and teaching kind of a role now. That second season kind of thing in life where it's like, well, I want to share more of what I've learned. I want to help and support. I want to do more of that. And so it's like, okay, if I had a blank sheet of paper and I was going to start my business again, what would it look like? Because it's very easy for me to kind of respond to what people want and where I'm going. And, I could be doing keynotes every day of the week. And it's like, yeah, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to get on a plane anymore. I don't want to travel as much. I've done my lifetime and many other lifetimes probably worth of travel. I don't like leaving Tasmania. I got beautiful little house, beautiful dogs. We have a lovely life here. It takes a lot more to get me on a plane now, but I want to really set this next 10 years up to have meaning for me and to be something that I look back very proudly on at the end of my kind of career, whenever that is. And so whilst that does keep me up at night in a way, because it means so much to me, not in a worry way, but in a, I really want to do this well and take everything that I've learned, every mistake I've made, everything I've got right, everything I'm still figuring out, put that into a bundle and say, right, how am I going to use all of that to go forward? And that's how I feel right now, actually, Kim. So I'll probably, go away for a week somewhere, there's no shortage of little shacks around Tassie, and I'll spend a week, descending into the madness of butcher's paper and post-it notes and, doing that stuff in the next month or two, actually, is what I'm planning to do that. And so, well, what does this plan look like for the next 10 years?
Sounds like a pretty fun week, if you ask me. And you're
I
right,
know.
there is no shortage of beautiful places to stay in Tassie. I've interviewed quite a few of them. So I will make sure
I
to
can
share them
imagine.
with you.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Well, I'm always looking for nice little writing places too. So we always go up to the Bay of Fires and we got a place up there that we rent out on a regular basis. But I'm always looking for new places. And I had the luxury of being able to go away and write now, whereas I didn't have that, in the beginning of my little world. And I know it's so funny. Like you and I both go, oh my God, that sounds so awesome to go away for a week and do all of that.
Yeah.
There's probably people listening going, seriously? That's your idea of a great week, My second idea of a greatest week is to go away and just write for a week, and it's like our idea of great weeks may be slightly skewed, Kim, I'm thinking, but anyway, we understand that. And there'll be those people listening who get it.
We do, yeah. Just the ability to focus on one thing would be amazing for me.
Oh, I hear.
Andrew, everything you are doing and are putting into this world absolutely lives to that, expectation you have of yourself, which is how can I share my learnings widely and support the next person who's going to do this or the person who's ready to level up in this. You absolutely are delivering on that. So I'm very grateful that
Thank
you're
you.
doing this work. And I know the listener will be too. Of course, I'm going to have the links to your book, your newest book, into the show notes and highly recommend the listener go check it out. But what else can we do to support you in return?
Thank you. It's a lovely question. I think, connect with me, share what's going on. I mean, I love getting other people's stories as well, Kim, like how are people doing what they do? I'm extraordinarily curious. As I say, I think that whether it's I'm finding out more, my next door neighbor here, I think you and I may have chatted about it. I've got this 86-year-old next door neighbor who is like, seriously, I think he's a Terminator. This guy is like, you see him in the morning at 6 o'clock when I'm looking out the window, kind of go, he's just getting back from his swim, right? Now, this is in Hobart, Tasmania. Yesterday, he was doing a 20-kilometre hike with his buddies, his youngster friends who are 75. He does like 5-day multi-walks, like Lolita and I, we just go, he is our hero. And I find, for me personally, over the years again, I'm a bit tired about hearing the Gary Vee stories and all those things. No disrespect, good on people for doing what they're doing. You know what? I want to hear about Neville's story, the next door neighbor. I want to hear about, there's a lady I met recently who's a Serbian refugee who runs a roast chicken store in Cairns. She's run it for 40 years. Those beautiful stories from people that are doing amazing things, but no one really knows because most of the big stories are what we focus on. And even my writing, my next book is called Bigger, and it's about the concept of being bigger, doing bigger, acting bigger, living bigger, etc. And the people that I want to talk about in that book, no one will have heard of them. And I want to explain how the acts of bigness, those people that inspire us to be better versions of ourselves, are kind of next door, or down at the corner shop, or etc. And I think, again, so the answer to your question there, Kim, is connect with me, share your story with me, send me, positive stuff, and send me links to people doing cool stuff around the world. I mean, that's more and more the stuff that I love, adore, and has meaning and significance for me these days.
It sounds fantastic. And I love the sound of this book because I am always
Mm,
thinking to myself, think bigger, do not think small, think bigger. What else can you do? What else
mm,
can you be? How else can you grow? Because it is exciting once you scratch that itch off and then you just keep
amazing.
growing from there. So I can't wait to listen, read, and support your future work as well as the work that's already out there. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I know we've run a little bit over, so I'm so appreciative of that. And yeah, I'm already looking forward to the next time.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, really nice to have a chat. And thank you for putting so much thought into those questions as well. I really appreciate that because it's, to me, a really lovely sign of respect as well. You don't want to go on a podcast and just answer the same questions all the time. And it's really nice because it's very thought provoking for me. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, folks.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.